I think this is probably going to be my last video for today. Just going to go into AX and we're going to set it up. The GST, which if you're in the UK is the VAT, or South Africa it's VAT. I don't really know the regulations for any other country, what they call it. I think it might be VAT in US too, not sure. And then I'm going to set up some journal names. So hopefully it won't be too long an episode, but what this will do is this will kind of round out the initial setup of the general ledger, and then from there the next series will start focusing on Cashbook. So yeah, cool, let's get started. So what we're going to do is go into AX, we're going to check our company. I'm in Kudu, and I want to go into setup, so general ledger setup to GST, and I'm going to go GST codes. I'm just going to go GST, and I'm going to call this GST. Oh, we've got settlement period and ledger posting group, which haven't been done yet. Okay, so what that means is normally you could go exit this, fill it out, or a nice handy shortcut, just right click within there and you go view details and it'll take you to that form so you can sort it out from there. So that's what I did. And I'm going to go new. I'm going to call it standard. Surprise, surprise. And I'm going to call the standard settlement period. And I'm just going to say authority. Again, I haven't set this authority up, but it's actually the taxman. So I'm going to go view details, and the taxman in Australia is called the ATO. So that stands for Australian Taxation Office, and they are actually really good. Always super helpful. Yeah, generally very good. Okay, cool. So we set that up. So that means we can now choose the authority. Boom. We've got a GST settlement period. Terms of payment, I mean, yeah, we could set this up, you know, you could set 30 days or 60 days, but I think once we get into accounts payable, accounts receivable, I'll go into more detail about the terms of payment. Cool, so that's all good. We're going to say settlement period, standard, and we want a ledger posting group. So this is going to be an interesting one. So let's go view details. Okay, so we don't have one, so I'm going to create one, and I'm going to call it standard, and I'm going to call it standard, surprise, and GST payable. So in that previous episode, we set up our chart of accounts. I don't believe I actually put in a GST main account there. So let's close this. We're going to have to choose that there. Although I'll have to come back and finish the setup of the ledger posting group. But let's go into chart of accounts and make sure there's actually a GST account here that I can use. So over here I've got all of this stuff. So where does GST go? For me, GST is generally a liability. Well, it's a bit of both, isn't it? It can be a liability or it can be an asset. So the way GST works for the non-accountants, although if you're not an accountant, you've probably already been lost in these videos. So the way GST works is, let's say I buy something for $100, or let's say $110. GST in Australia is 10%, so that means the vendor that I bought it from actually gets 100. The government, the ATO, actually gets $10. So now I've bought that and I sell it on for $220. Then I received $220, but I actually owe the government $20 of that sale, and I only make $200. So in the first instance where I purchased it, that GST needs to come back to me. So then it's actually an asset, right? So it's GST receivable, right? Because I've spent that money on GST. So therefore I get it back. Now in the second example where I sold it on, I've charged GST. So I need to pay that GST back. So that'll be GST payable. And then what will happen is there'll be a difference, right? So now I need to pay $20, but I get a credit for $10. So ultimately I owe the ATO $10 net. And that'll be a GST control account. So some people would set up 3 accounts: GST payable, GST receivable, and GST control account. I don't really care to set up 3. I just want a control account, and then the balance will be what I owe. It can be a bit harder to reconcile choosing my approach. It's really, if you're an accountant, you've probably got your own vibes and the own way of doing it, and all power to you. But yeah, that's not my way. So I'm going to set it up as a liability. So director's loans is over there. That's equity. So under liabilities, I'm going to create a new one here, and I'm going to call it, oh sorry, not a new chart of account, that's not what I meant. So under liabilities, which is the 400 thing, I'm going to go new, and I'm going to say this is, well, first of all, I just noticed an error there. Those there shouldn't actually, because the code for liabilities is 4, not equity. So I'm going to delete those equity accounts. Those are wrong anyway. So what I'm going to do is just create a new liability account, and that's going to be 402,000, and this is going to be called GST control. And because although I've created as a liability, it actually can be an asset. It's in my experience, it's very rarely an asset. Occasionally it is, but more often than not, it's a liability. So that's why I chose the 4 naming convention. So there we go. I'm going to copy and paste that, and now we've got GST control account. Okay, so what that means is I can go in general ledger, GST, ledger posting groups, boom, 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 and I can just say GST payable goes to GST control, GST receivable goes to GST control, settlement account goes to GST control, and there you go. That should be grand. And now that's GST. Posting type must be GST. Okay, cool. So what that means is, let's go view details, is over here within your main account, in chart of accounts, you've got to go 402 GST control, expand setup, and under posting type over here, just choose GST. So if I've done that, and I now close, boom, it works. Cool. So our GST code is actually set up now, except there's no amount. Okay, so to do that, we want to say values, and we're going to say from, we're just going to say, I mean, these companies only transact from the 1st of July, right? So we'll go from there. There's no end date, and there's no minimum limit, upper limit, any of that fancy stuff. It's just 10% in Australia, right? Both dates in the period must be filled in, really. So I don't know when the GST regulators decide, so I'm just going to put in a very far date in the future. And then what will happen is if the GST rate changes before then, I'll just come in and adjust this. So there we go. 10%. Woohoo. Okay, so GST setup. Now we also want GST free. So no GST. And then it'll be grand. Settlement period will be the same. And the ledger pair post in will be the same. So no GST, it'll be a bunch of stuff, right? So like if you import stuff, there won't be GST. A whole bunch of reasons why there won't be GST. If you want to find out what those reasons are, have a Google and yeah, do some reading. Cool. Journals. I think, yeah, let's do journals, right? Okay, let's do journals. So there's a whole heap of journals here, right? So, I mean, if you're a consultant, generally what you'd have is a lot of the setup that I'm doing is you define a standard setup, and then each new implementation that you do, you just roll out these standards and then adjust a few things here and there to meet your client's needs. So I'm just going to use mine, I guess. So I'm going to go new, and I just go through the ones I know I normally use, right? So I don't really use those so much. I definitely use a daily journal. So let's go daily. I'm going to call it daily. Voucher series. One thing we haven't done is generate number sequences. Okay, so let's actually leave journal names for today, and let's do the wonderful world of number sequences. Just gonna clean up this menu a lot because they put a lot of stuff in here that you never use. So we don't care about retail, don't care about transportation at this stage, or warehouse management. Look, we will eventually, but for now, let's keep it simple. Procurement and sourcing we can leave. Compliance we can leave. Cost accounting we can take out. That just looks a little bit better, right? So we can go into system admin. Oh, sorry, it's actually organizational administration, and we can go number sequences, and we can generate. Okay, let's close that. We go next. All this wonderful stuff, we just go next, and we finish. Now it's just going to generate all of the default number sequences. Some people I know will go through every single number sequence as part of their implementation. Good luck. More than welcome doing that. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to add much value in the grand scheme of things, but each to their own. So, number sequence are done. GST is set up. Ledger's pretty good. We're going to leave it for there. Next episode, we'll set up journal names. And yeah, and then from there, we'll move on to the subledger. That's all for now. Cheers, guys.